Old Jimbo Fisher's at it again, in my opinion. Old Jimbo, the con man. I just don't know who's worse, Jimbo Fisher or Deion Sanders. But I tell you, they're running close 1 and 2. But right now, it looks like Jimbo may have the edge as far as being the con man. Also, we're going to talk about Auburn's hire of Hugh Freeze. Does that heavy luggage that he had with him from Ole Miss, is that going to re-percolate itself? I don't know. But let's talk about it. Well, here we are again, another episode of the OCF. That's the Outlaw of College Football. That's me, JPC. That also stands for Jesse Paul Clark on Facebook, spelled Jesse without the I. Also on Twitter at OCF Productions. Now, getting right into it here, old Jimbo Fisher, it seems that he has an offensive coordinator. I didn't know this because I've been under the impression the whole time that Jimbo was calling the plays. I mean, what other coach, besides outside of maybe, I don't know, Lane Kiffin, maybe there's some other ones out there, but I don't know of any coach that carries around a whole freaking, like just a book in his hands on the sidelines. I can understand maybe, holding one sheet of paper over there or something. But Jimbo's roaming up and down the sidelines, constantly looking at his big-ass novel of plays to call. Maybe it's the famous folder from the Waterboy that Coach Klein had. I don't know. But I do know this. His ass has been calling plays like Coach Klein before the Waterboy came along. Maybe they should rename them the Texas A&M Mud Dogs or some shit. I don't know. But I do know this, he fired Darrell Dickey, and I don't know if he fired the James Cooley guy or not, but Darrell Dickey, from what I read here, I'm going to throw some graphs up in a second. Darrell Dickey was the offensive coordinator, supposedly, full-time, up until last year when they went 8-4, I think. Or right after they went 8-4, whatever season that was, he got demoted to co-offensive coordinator, and they brought James Cooley in. And both of these guys, as it says in this article, held that title nominally. By nominally, they mean Queen of England, King of England now. Queen of England, King of England kind of title where you got a title, but you don't really do shit because the head coach, that being Jimbo Fisher, is over there holding his novelistic playbook and calling all the plays. So, to take the heat off himself, as Jimbo always does, because he's a shady bastard, he fires the pseudo, or whatever you want to call it, the facade that they call an offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. He fires Darrell Dickey. Now, I don't know if he fired James Cooley too, but supposedly they're out looking for a new offensive coordinator. But here's a for anybody applying for that job, here's a little word of advice. You're not going to be calling plays. You're there to take a fall, as you can see with Darrell Dickey. And Darrell Dickey, I'm sure he's probably related to the famous. He's probably related to the famous Darrell Dickey, probably his grandson or something like that. But it all comes back to Jimbo and the Texas A&M fans, the Aggies, the boosters. They continue to let him perform this mirage or facade or whatever you want to call it. Just basic lies from Jimbo. And I know they're sort of over the barrel. They really can't do much about it because now they got what? I think maybe the buyout went down to 86 million. Only 86 million. But in the future, when Jimbo fires probably another offensive coordinator in 2 or 3 years, hopefully your boosters will have enough money by then to maybe get maybe a collective of boosters together and buy this guy out, because he's going to continue making excuses until finally one day y'all get the drift and y'all like, hey, this is the problem. The problem is Jimbo Fisher. The man has never been able to take criticism. He can't take blame. He can't take anything but maybe blaming someone else. That's his gig. That's what he's always done. Even back in the days at Florida State, where he covered up for rapist Winston. Or Jameis Winston, my bad. When he covered up for him. If it meant that Jimbo was going to win a few more games or win a national championship, if someone gets raped in the process, well, Jimbo will just explain it away. Just like he did that. Y'all going to say what you want to say, but he covered that shit up. So did Florida State's administration. And that's the kind of man he is. Now, to get away from Jimbo a little bit, old Auburn has hired Hugh Freeze. In fine Auburn fashion, I might add. As you know, they hired Bruce Pearl as well, the basketball coach who had a show cause on him, which most universities will not touch. But Auburn, they're a special breed down there. I don't know why I worry about it. I mean, I don't want them to get a coach that's good. I mean, I shouldn't. They're my chief rival. So, but as a college football fan, you can't help yourself. You want to try to name the best candidates, but Hugh Freeze has a lot of baggage with him. As you know, he had an incident with escort service. He was caught calling escort services on Ole Miss administrative type phones. And whether he was calling for himself or the players is irrelevant to me. And he ended up saying that he was doing it for his players. But it really doesn't matter either way, Hugh. You called an escort service, which is code for prostitution. Everybody knows that most escort services are fronts for prostitution. And the thing that really bothers me about Hugh Freeze is not that he done that, because, that does bother people. It bothers me a little bit. But what really bothers me about all that, to compound this, he done it under the guise of being a Christian man. And you have these TV evangelists out there that continually rip people off all the time. So good preachers and good churches and whatnot, they're fighting against that image all the time. There's this narrative out there now that churches are just out to get your money, or they're ripping you off, they're hiding behind God, because of people like Hugh Freeze and all these TV evangelists. So what Hugh Freeze does is, to try to mask his shadiness, he will quote Bible verses, talk about God and all that, and then people are like, well, he must be a good guy. I mean, he knows Bible verses. He seems like a Christian guy. And then he does this shit and gets caught doing it. And people are more apt to forgive people like that because they feel like, oh, they just had a moment. Now, this guy's probably had a moment for quite some time, in my opinion. And the fact that he done it was bad enough, but the fact that he wants to hide behind religion, it just reeks, man. It just tells me this guy, he's not sorry for what he did. He's just sorry that he got caught. And moving forward for Auburn and their fans, if I was you, I would keep a leery eye out for him. But now for Hugh Freeze, if he has changed, a word of advice to Hugh Freeze: it don't matter how many games you win. It don't matter how many times you beat Alabama. I think that's why they hired Hugh Freeze, is because he's beaten Alabama twice. But Gus Malzahn had also beat Nick Saban twice. Tommy Tuberville had beat Nick Saban 4 times, and they got rid of him. So word of advice to Hugh Freeze is, if you don't give a reach-around session to some of these boosters from time to time, it don't matter how many times you beat Nick Saban, no matter how many times you beat Alabama, it don't matter if you win a national championship, they will fire your ass. Ask Gene Chizik. But just wanted to talk on those two subjects real quick, touch on it real quick, and get you guys and gals' opinion on that, because I was interested to know what everybody thought about these two incidents or these two new stories about Jimbo and Hugh Freeze. Drop it in the comment section and let me know what you think. And as always, KMCA to all the other teams. Class is now officially dismissed.